Robert, your pet's ally. Hope you're well today. Today I'm going to start to talk to you a little bit about fasting, which is one of those subjects that raises a lot of for a lot of people. We've kind of had drilled into us that we need to eat 3 meals a day and that our pets need to eat at least twice a day and every day and all that good stuff. So there's the reason I kind of picked this subject is that uh, there was a lot of fasting days available, or to us, and the problem is that that's become something that's really scary for people. So back in the day, with religious holidays, things of that nature, there was a terrific amount of fasting. And it's the thing that's interesting to me is that it it's really it really freaks people out now. So there were a lot of religious holidays, and frankly, there was a lot of starvation. And Pepe's going to try and come help. Pepe certainly thinks that fasting is a very bad idea. It is 4 o'clock. He is convinced that it is time for supper, and it is not, Pep. So sorry. But what I'm what I'm trying to get to is that we all ate a whole lot less, and so the thing that's interesting is that we are having a difficult time with calorie restriction all over the world, and I keep talking because I can give you studies and statistics from humans. I can't with pets so much because, again, most people don't realize, but most of the animal studies, the dog and cat studies, are funded by drug companies when they are trying to bring a new drug to market. And so there is very little real research done about what's actually optimizing health for pets. So most of the ideas around fasting came from this idea of calorie restriction. There was a study that came out probably in the mid to late 80s in mice that showed a 25% reduction in calories extended the lifespan in mice by 10% or more. That's huge. Just the one she thinks she showed a 25% reduction in calories, extended the lifespan in mice by 10%. So is that better with the audio now, guys? Hopefully so. Hopefully it's cutting back in. At any rate, so now what you're reading a terrific amount about is fasting on the human side, intermittent fasting, time-restricted eating, and then just plain old fasting. The other in cancer. was better, 6 p.m. Nothing short. Try that. Can you guys hear me now? Hopefully so. Can you all hear now, or that's still out? The upside is I am recording this in the cloud. So, okay, good. All right. I think I have a bad jack on the computer. Awesome. So what I was talking about was a study that a researcher did in time-restricted eating. And so what that means is that you would not eat after either by 7 p.m., certainly no more food. By 6 p.m. is preferable. And then 13 hours after that, then you would, resume eating again. So basically it's just you eat supper early and you don't eat again. So no midnight snacks, things like this. So in this group of women that had had breast cancer and had been treated and had been cleared, the remission rate was astonishing in the group that did the time-restricted eating. Less than 40% of the women that did this time-restricted eating program had a recurrence of breast cancer versus something like 60 to 80% in the women that did not participate in the time-restricted eating group. That single just change in lifestyle made an enormous difference in the return of breast cancer. And again, these women did not change how they ate. They just changed the timing around how they ate. So that's pretty amazing stuff. There are other versions of fasting. I mean, there's just plain old fasting where you don't eat anything and you just drink water. And there are tons of clinics that do water fasts, basically. And another option is something called intermittent fasting. And essentially that's somewhat similar to time-restricted eating, except for instead of cutting off your food consumption by 6 or 7 p.m. And it's different, Jeff, than intermittent fasting. Intermittent fasting means that you have a certain period of time where you don't eat. And that ranges anywhere from 14 hours to 18 hours, depending on who you talk to and what works well for you. So, and April, I'm getting to that question, why? So why did they have no recurrence, but the other women did? And so there's another protocol out there called fasting mimicking diet. And Walter Longo wrote a book some 3 or 4 years ago, I think, called The Longevity Diet. And in that, what he did was study people that live in blue zones. And these are places where the number of centenarians, people that get to 100, is much, much higher than everywhere else in the world. And in fact, the average lifespan in these areas tends to be higher. And so what he found was that they ate largely animal-based diets, and they had some sort of issue as far as they didn't have access to food for a long time in their childhood. And then some of them also, just because they were practicing different religions, had fast days. So for instance, Ramadan for Muslim people, for many Christians, fasting is a part of Lent, for instance. And so what they found was that in these areas that had religions that included fasting periods, they lived to be much, much longer. Now, fasting mimicking diet, I tried this about last August. And what I found was a terrific breakthrough. It is not a fast, but it is actually eating roughly 50% of the calories that you would normally, and doing this for about 5 days. So some of the benefits of fasting are going to be things like it lowers your insulin resistance. It allows your gut to kind of rest. It allows the body to get rid of waste products because it's not expending the energy into processing food. And in the case of fasting mimicking diet, at the end of 5 days, what Dr. Longo found was that things like human growth hormone increases were quite marked, and anti-inflammatory molecules were much more pronounced. Apoptosis, which is normal cell death, returned to normal in many cases, and cancer cells were actually being tracked down by the immune system and killed. And so these are all the benefits of fasting for various periods of time. So in our world, where we want to have snacks and things of that nature, there's a great deal of information that also says that if you don't have snacks, if you only eat 2 to 3 meals a day, this in and of itself will drop your base glucose level and improve your insulin sensitivity. So why shouldn't we apply this to pets? There are tons of reasons why this is useful. And my colleagues have told you for years and decades that no, you have to feed them, twice a day, every day, blah, blah, blah. It just doesn't make sense. So first thing to do if this pet has vomiting or diarrhea, GI issues, is to not feed them, which most of you are not. We want them to eat. We get worried when they don't eat, but really that is the best thing to do, is to let the gut rest and kind of clean out. And that way the GI bugs are going to the evil spirits and the enterotoxins are going to get cleaned out. So I think that this is something that's reasonable to put into your pet's kind of protocol. At least one day a week, skip at least one meal, and maybe consider doing that twice a week or something of that nature. So what I would do is make sure that yeah, Terry, I hear you. So make sure that your pet doesn't have any medical reasons not to do this. So for instance, diabetes would make this very tricky. Pregnancy would make this very tricky. If they get hypoglycemic because of, say, pancreatic cancer or something like that, that's also going to make it very difficult. So you do want to make sure that this is not something that would create a medical emergency for your pet. But I think it is something that's good to go ahead and take into account. And Mona and Pepe are very displeased when they miss a meal. And that makes it really tough. So you've got some questions. And Jeff, I think we have a matter of disagreement, but according to my research, intermittent fasting is different from time-restricted eating because of the time qualifications. Many people that do intermittent fasting may eat much later into the evening. Now, April's asking, what if they're on medication? And that's a valid point. Again, if you've got a major health issue going on, then skipping a meal may be a big deal. And so especially if the medication needs to be given with food, then maybe what you do is just make a smaller meal. So maybe 50% of what's normal. And I think that's a reasonable thing to do. And it provides enough calories so that they don't get into trouble. And again, puppies, no, probably not a great idea because they are growing so quickly that if they miss a meal, it may well create problems as far as low blood sugar, things of that nature. Obviously, pregnancy, diabetes, these other health conditions I mentioned, you do not want to give to miss meals because you can create a medical situation that's a big problem. So that's what I've got for you. So again, fasting will drop the insulin resistance so that the insulin is better able to get nutrients into the cell instead of having an excess of sugar floating around, which creates all sorts of cellular damage. It will drop your pet briefly into ketosis, which helps to improve several metabolic parameters for a short period of time. It allows the gut to rest, and then it allows the liver to get rid of more waste products before, because the gut is resting. And over a long period of time, again, it may allow growth hormone, human growth hormone, certainly we know that happens, and other things to have a good response there. Yeah, and Sherry, actually, dogs with kidney disease shouldn't be a problem. Kidney failure may be an issue. And I know that you're very into the answers thing, but I'm not sure how well that works for the vast majority of pets, because some pets are really sensitive to it, even if it is a fermented product. And Terry, you're right. The whole idea here is that we couldn't routinely get a meal 2 to 3 times a day because, sometimes we didn't run fast enough to catch the deer, or, things of that nature. So that sort of nature made us fast, and our bodies are really built to do that. Any questions I can answer for you all that have not been answered here? And I'm not seeing any at the moment. Then we'll go. All right, cool. So that's what I've got for you this week. Love to get your opinions on that, and let me know what you think. But I believe that incorporating at least skipping one meal once a week for the vast majority of pets is safe. If you think about animals that are having GI disease, often they do miss meals for 1 to 2 to 3 times a day. So great, and you guys have got some questions popping up here. So April, I think probably by the age of 18 months to 2 years, the dogs and cats are physiologically mature. So I think that's a good place to stop it. And Sherry, yes, I know you're doing a combo, and I'm glad the Crock Pet's been working well for you. And then Amber, I would not leave food down, period. Because again, for several reasons. One is it's a way as pets get older, they can become heavier because they've got food down, and we kind of lose track on how much they're eating. And then again, as I mentioned earlier, if we snack all the time, then what happens is our fasting, or our blood sugar, our resting blood sugar, gets higher and higher and higher every year. And then that can kick us into metabolic syndrome or prediabetes. So I think leaving the food down is not a great idea. With cats, that can be a real challenge because they are one of the few other species that stress eat. And so, multiple people have had issues with their cats not eating. If they don't have food down, man, they are screaming at them, at 3 o'clock in the morning. And so that's not fun. And so what I think you should do is, if you want to take a look at this, and I think, Terry, you've got a great deal of experience with sort of liquid fasting, as you put it, is to try it and see what happens, and make sure that it's not creating issues for any of your pets, and then put it into a rotating schedule and see what happens. And Chris, you're right. You may have a dog that wakes you up, so it gets a little frustrating, but yeah, exactly. So, keep working on, working on it, and, try it yourself. It's one of those things that for most of us, it's more of a mental thing. And once you get into doing that, it's not so difficult as you think. So to give you some frame of reference, I just restarted a a fasting mimicking diet protocol, Dr. Longo's calls for a lot of carbohydrates and solanaceae or nightshade vegetables, which I don't tolerate well. So I basically did a keto hacked version of it. And essentially, again, is the idea is that you're going to eat 50% less calories than you would normally. And then also to remove all of the animal products. And the reason that's important is, again, to kind of take the load off the digestive system so that it has a chance to reboot, as you said, Sherry, and also, again, to allow the liver and the remainder of the immune system to kind of get things cleaned up. So any questions I haven't answered for you today? And if not, I am going to sign off and we will talk again next week. So I'm Dr. Ruth Roberts, your pet's ally. And until next week, remember, your pet's best health starts in the bowl. Thanks.